Costa Rica real estate deals are often like relationships. Frequently, they have a lot of drama, and sometimes it's just best to walk away from them. Greetings from Costa Rica. My name is Matt Rosensteel. I'm co-owner broker of Coldwell Banker Pacific Realty, and today our topic for our live Sunday chat with Costa Rica Matt is walking away from Costa Rica real estate deals. In my 10 plus years of helping people buy and sell real estate here in Guanacaste, I've seen that frequently, for many reasons, a buyer should just decide not to proceed with a purchase for a variety of reasons. And today I want to go over the subject first and foremost to protect you so that you can walk away from a transaction and not lose your deposit, but also to give you different circumstances in which I think, yes, you should walk away from a Costa Rica real estate deal. First, we'll go over how you can ensure that you have the option to withdraw from a sale and when you'll be able to do that. Second, we'll go over some red flags, really the reasons I think that people should decide to walk away from real estate deals. Third, we'll touch on times when I think people should just stay in and bear things through to get the fruits of their labor and stick with the transaction. And finally, we will take first a tour of one of my favorite new listings, and we'll wrap up with a new segment on my live Sunday chats that I'm tentatively calling the funniest thing that happened to me this week. Because I'm live every Sunday at 11 a.m. Costa Rica time, and because we could all use a little levity, I'd like to start sharing an anecdote with you all every week as to the funniest thing that's happened to me in the week prior. And especially, I want to highlight moments that really bring out just how hilarious it can be to work in Costa Rica real estate and live in such a quirky place in the world with all of its nuances and the fun side of doing business here. Again, thank you very much for joining me. Our topic today is backing out of Costa Rica real estate deals. Appreciate you watching. If you like straightforward information, do be sure to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned. Greetings again. Let's start out by addressing the subject of backing out of Costa Rica real estate deals in a general sense. I would say that there's a higher percentage of deals here that do not go to closing than in other markets in the US or Canada or Europe, because you can see a lot more unpredictable factors that could possibly tank a purchase here in Costa Rica. Very often, people are buying these properties as a luxury item or as part of a big change in their lives. And so you see a lot of transactions that do not make it to closing for one reason or another. And I want to start by looking at how you, as a buyer of Costa Rica real estate, can protect yourself in entering into a contract. So the simple answer to this question, when should you back out of a Costa Rica real estate deal? Simply put, you should do it during the due diligence period so that you get a refund of your deposit. And that's a pretty obvious answer. But even before you've made a deposit, while you're negotiating a contract here and when you're making formal offers to sellers, you need to be sure that from the start, your offer, which will be expressed as an option to purchase agreement, includes a very clear clause that your deposit is refundable during the due diligence period. And typically in the Costa Rica market, you should see that your deposit is refundable for a blanket, any kind of cause circumstance, really, in order to protect buyers in Guanacaste and to be able to guarantee people the security they need to invest in a country like Costa Rica, you typically have a fully refundable deposit during the due diligence period. And usually that will be spelled out clearly in the option to purchase agreement that's made for your offer. If you have a realtor who is not including that clause in your offer, you should ask them specifically to line it out that until X date, when due diligence will be over, we will have the right to withdraw from the sale for any reason. Because yes, that is the standard you're seeing here in Guanacaste, where a lot of foreigners are buying and selling real estate. And also, you really just have to have that blanket reason to be, or that blanket clause that covers you in any circumstance. Usually, that clause will say that a buyer gets a refund of their deposit, assuming they submit written notice to the seller of their intention to withdraw before the end of due diligence. So there's another key point here. You have to make sure that your realtor and agent includes this clause in the contract. And then you also have to make sure that towards the end of due diligence, if you've decided to withdraw from a sale, your agent has written this to the other party and made it very formal and clear that you intend to withdraw from the sale and that you are hereby requesting a refund of your deposit. I have been in circumstances where buyers' agents simply neglect to say that their buyer is withdrawing from the sale by the end of a due diligence deadline. They don't set a deadline on their calendar, and when you get to the end of due diligence, all of a sudden they've forgotten about the deal, or maybe it's not on their radar that day, and they neglect to send formal notice, and they're putting your deposit at risk. Now, normally a buyer's attorney would say, well, we found this and that problem with due diligence, and they could try and rescue your deposit backhandedly or sort of after the fact. But just make sure that if you're withdrawing from a sale and you've taken that decision, that your formal written notification gets to the seller's side, that it was clearly spelled out in the contract you signed as your option to purchase agreement, and that the seller acknowledges receipt of your notice of withdrawal, so that everything is 100% formal and that you're definitely getting back your deposit. So let's talk about circumstances in which I think you should walk away from a Costa Rica real estate deal. And a lot of the red flags that you will see in a Costa Rica property can be seen well before you actually submit your offer. I would highly recommend that you encourage your realtor to obtain the legal information for a property even before you've made an offer, so that they can look at the title. Your realtor should be able to pull up in the National Registry the title search for the property and quickly see if there are any extraordinary liens or encumbrances on the property before you even go under contract or before you make an offer. Your realtor should also be able to ask questions of the seller's side to get a better understanding of anything that they see on the title. And before you get into negotiations with the property, that preliminary title search is something your representative should do. And you can ask them, have you checked out the title? Is everything looking clear? On that title and the search that they should have done, they should also be able to give you information about when the seller acquired it. And in most circumstances, if they acquired it recently, they should also be able to give you the price at which the seller purchased the property. So double check your agent at that juncture as well. You know, we're about to submit an offer on this property. Did you check the title, and what did you see? Because anything that is a mortgage, a lawsuit, some of these really big red flags that a property could raise should be able to be seen easily through that title search. When they pull up the estudio registral, or the title search in the registry here, they're going to be able to see any type of legal action that's being enacted against the property. They can see liens. They can also see whether or not the property has easement restrictions, access easements that they have to provide to other properties, water, electrical easements. Perhaps they have a utility line running through it that actually belongs to a neighborhood. And all of that is apparent on the title in our public registry, which is an open database. So very early, you should see those flags that, for example, if a seller's rep has not brought up and disclosed one of those problems, immediately alarm bells should be sounding. And if, for example, they didn't mention that there's a lien on the property and you find it before making the offer, already you should start thinking, well, why haven't they mentioned this lien, and are they going to be able to get it resolved by the time we closed? Really, in any circumstance, there's an important question to ask yourself. If you are in a rush to buy a Costa Rica property, you're hoping to close efficiently, and really your plans involve owning it quickly, then I would be very tempted to withdraw from a sale anytime these sorts of basic red flags, like a lien or a lawsuit, a legal encumbrance, came up. Because in Costa Rica, you can be guaranteed that the process to resolve any lien against a title, anything that's registered on it when you enter into the contract, that process is going to be cumbersome, to say the least. That's a bit of a polite word. Other people would call it a cluster cuss, or different words to describe mucking through just how difficult Costa Rica bureaucracy can be. And so if, for example, you're hoping to have a property by the coming high season, and you find out that it has a lien against it from the homeowners association because of a dispute with the owner, really you have to be realistic that almost no one can resolve a legal process here within a 60 to 90 day timeline that you would see as the typical closing timeline. So in any circumstance where you are in a rush and you see a lien, civil lawsuit, any kind of legal action against the property, I would definitely be headed for the hills at that juncture and looking for a property that would be unencumbered. Another situation in which I feel people should consider walking away from a property, the obvious red flags that can come up from a home inspection here. And first and foremost, stressing the fact that you should never, ever buy a property without a home inspection. And second of all, that if a home inspector, isn't really able to get a good look at a property, but all of the signs point to the fact that it was cheap, improvised construction, you should really consider leaving it and not taking advantage of that opportunity, because there are builders here that put together real lemons, and you won't find that a home inspector necessarily has access to the same tools, technology, codes. Construction here is not as standard as it is in the US or Canada. But when your inspector says that they can tell that it was an improvised structure, when things look like they were done at the most affordable price point, and that the construction was sort of slapped together, you can be very concerned that the house is only going to produce problems for you here. Because yes, we have a lot of contractors who have varying levels of ability. And if the signs point to the fact that, the home wasn't just built by a quality contractor to begin with, even if it's the perfect price point and it's your dream come true, really you should consider walking away, because nothing can create a more miserable Costa Rica homeowners experience than dealing with the results of that haphazard, really sort of basic construction that wasn't done by a quality contractor. Another reason you should absolutely consider backing out of a Costa Rica real estate transaction is when the seller tries to dictate any of the terms of the logistics for closing a deal. You'll see that very often, especially with developers, for example, they'll say that our sales team, or the people who will be helping you acquire this property, the attorney, the home inspectors, etc., that's all an in-house team that you'll just work with for your purchase process. In Costa Rica, the buyer has the absolute right to determine the closing notary, the lawyer who's going to handle the sale. And if a seller is trying to make things more convenient by working with their in-house counsel and forcing you to work with their attorney, absolutely it should be an enormous red flag that your best interests aren't protected. Yes, there have been many successful sales where a seller's attorney also represents a buyer and people just work with the established crew. But there are also a ton of circumstances where, for one reason or another, working with the seller's representation or working with their terms, if whether it's the escrow service provider that they insist you use or the attorney that's involved in closing the deal, that can produce dangerous liabilities for you. And frequently, one of the biggest sources of anguish and the reason that people end up having an unsuccessful experience here is that they decide to let the seller mandate the terms of how a deal will be closed. They willingly assume that everything's going to be okay because the smiling people on the other end of the table seem trustworthy. And it turns out that they were being misrepresented or poorly represented all along. Right back at you. Hello, everybody from Washington State and Ottawa. Take this moment for a quick beverage break here. I do have to admit, on Sundays, it's tough not to have an Imperial. If you're watching, cheers. As a reminder, we're going over those red flags, some of the situations in which I feel buyers should back out of real estate deals. We just covered whenever the seller dictates logistics of a sale and tries to force you to work with a particular attorney. You'll also hear the phrase from sellers very often, that's just how it is in Costa Rica. You have to accept X, Y, or Z condition of the property, of the title, etc., because this is how it is in Costa Rica. Don't be forced into that situation where you're trusting a seller. Very frequently, you'll see people just try to gloss over problems with a property and convince you that you shouldn't be as concerned about a liability. And the only person, or rather the only people who can give you the accurate idea are your lawyer and your realtor. So essentially, don't trust sellers, and if you see them trying to force you to accept anything about a particular property, go to people who represent solely your interests and ask them for answers. And if you still doubt whether or not they're truly giving you the full picture, never hesitate to seek a second, third, or fourth opinion. Another circumstance, obviously, a red flag that a lot of people worry about in Costa Rica real estate transactions are fraudulent deals. And a lot of people are concerned that they're going to end up becoming the victims of property theft here because, yes, there are horror stories where it has happened to foreign investors. And to quickly touch on when and where that happens, uh, first of all, I have a video talking specifically about this subject with Gabriel Chavez, a lawyer that I frequently work with who really represents well his buyer's interests. And you really have to have a red flag and worry about a property that you're purchasing. First, if it's an undeveloped lot, it's a candidate for potentially having been involved in fraud more so than a home or condo. You really don't have to be concerned that in Costa Rica there are fraudsters successfully selling condos or homes that don't actually belong to them. Most often, this scheme that you hear about on the internet is done with undeveloped land because it's sure a heck of a lot easier to move the whole fraud thing along if you don't actually have to enter into a property or ask for keys or try and get access to a condo. Second, a fraudulent real estate transaction normally happens when you're looking at a property that has been owned by the seller for a very short period of time. And it should raise a red flag to you if you were buying an undeveloped piece of property that had very recently been acquired by whoever is trying to sell it to you. That can be one of the simplest setups in which essentially people who are trying to pull this scheme, they have to resell a property that they've fraudulently acquired in order to get the value out of it. And their idea is to either quickly get a loan against a property or to resell it to basically generate cash out of a stolen good. So you really only have to worry about those fraudulent schemes when you're looking at a lot if it's been recently acquired by the seller. And your attorney should be able, and actually your attorney is 100% able to pull the documents that transferred the property to its current owner from the National Registry. And right there, they should be able to see whether there are any signs that it's a possible fraudulent acquisition. And if so, if you see that, well, the seller only acquired this very recently and there are other signs, you can obviously be in a dire situation that you should walk away from, because you're very much in the danger, if you acquire the property, of the government finding the last transfer to be fraudulent and annulling the whole process that led to your ownership. So really, in most circumstances, if you're buying a home or condo here in Costa Rica, you don't have to worry too much that it's a possibility that it's fraudulently owned, only in the circumstances of undeveloped land. Finally, one of the red flags that I really want to raise and just throw out there that you see very often in real estate transactions are when the seller promises to fix things throughout a transaction, but doesn't necessarily offer that they'll close, or rather they'll make fixing those things a condition of closing. You'll see sellers, for example, if you make a demand that we need to see, obviously, this restriction removed from the title, and you'll see sellers try to give a nebulous commitment. Oh, don't worry, we'll take care of this. Oh, don't worry. Oh, don't worry. And they'll try and delay actually resolving an issue with a home, whether it's fixing something from a home inspection or it's getting a lien resolved. And they'll try to be friendly and sort of just push out the deadline for having it handled. And you need to make sure that at every juncture, you're getting in clear written terms that your moving forward with the sale is contingent upon that being resolved. And most often, I would suggest to buyers out there that if you get into a situation where a property has any kind of red flag that's raised, whether it's a clear physical defect, oftentimes you'll see that the plano, the registered survey, is off and their fence line isn't correct. all kinds of situations. And the seller might say, don't worry, we will resolve this before closing. In that sort of circumstance, you might want to say to the seller, well, don't worry, I don't want to enter into a written signed contract with you until it's resolved. And you shouldn't feel obligated to stay under an option to purchase agreement with any of these pending red flags. Feel free to use your leverage as a buyer and say, well, for now, I'm formally withdrawing from this sale so that there's no doubt as to the refundability of my deposit and whether or not I'm going to owe you the deposit money. I'm actually getting out of this sale. And as soon as X or Y problem is resolved and we can see that on the title, we'll be happy to move forward with a new option to purchase agreement. Because frequently you'll see that sellers want to keep things alive and going, and very much they can often be hoping that you'll sort of move out of that due diligence period without formally withdrawing and getting your deposit back. They're trying to get you into a situation where you feel you can either close or your deposit is not clearly refundable, and they may not really know that they're able to take care of whatever the problem is. If it's a problem with the registered land survey, or if they have a lien against, the property, they're going to depend on Costa Rica bureaucracies to solve the problem. They can't really tell you how long that's going to take, and if they try to get you to hang in a deal, very often they could be just trying to hook you and really get you in a position where your deposit becomes non-refundable and you're forced to stay in a deal despite conditions on the property that really shouldn't be what you want to, should be something for which you should walk away from the deal. I wanted to quickly share, before I get on to the funniest thing that's happened to me this week, I wanted to share really quickly a tour of one of my favorite new listings. A lot of people want to be close to everything with good access to the airport and good access to amenities, etc., but they want to be in a very private retreat. I listed a mountaintop home that absolutely epitomizes that combination of privacy and access. It's got a gorgeous view of the surrounding valley. And let's make sure I've got my things set up correctly here. We'll go ahead and take a look at this mountaintop retreat home. Are you dreaming of finding a peaceful, tranquil retreat in Guanacaste, Costa Rica? Today, I'm presenting my newest exclusive listing, a 2-bedroom home perched in the hills above San Pedro de Santa Cruz, Guanacaste. The location couldn't be more ideal. In addition to having this view of the absolutely picturesque Guanacaste countryside, you're only about 45 minutes drive from the Liberia International Airport. You're less than a kilometer away from a paved highway, and you're a short drive to some of Guanacaste's best beaches. Tamarindo and Langosta are just about 30 minutes down the road. You also have quick access to the amazing surf breaks at Playa Avellanas and Playa Negra. And Playa Junquial, my community, is just a short drive as well. As of July 2022, this mountain retreat home has an asking price of $430,000. The property has a 1.4 acre parcel. That's 5,000 square meters. You've got a pool and rancho here to really enjoy the outdoors. And you also have a couple of terraces that could accommodate future construction if you wanted to add guest houses. This is a home that looks like it belongs in Guanacaste, rather than that cold, clean, modern look that you're seeing from a lot of new construction here in the area. The home features hardwood ceilings, cabinetry, and closetry throughout, and the warm Guanacaste feel that really brings it to life. The first story of this home is an open floor plan, kitchen, living space, and dining room. The second story is the master suite, which really brings out the home's incredible view. You can lay in bed here and look out over the picturesque countryside and really enjoy the best that Guanacaste has to offer. If you want to know more, send me an email at matt@cbpacificrealty.com. Thanks for watching. We still have. So, folks, before I go today, I wanted to touch on what I felt was the funniest thing that happened to me this past week. And it's a moment that really brings out what you love and hate about Costa Rica real estate. We had a transaction that had gone on for 9 months. We signed the contract for the sale of an undeveloped lot back in December 2021. And this past week, we were finally on the cusp of closing it. You know, this has been an absolutely epic trial kind of deal, and I don't blame anyone. Essentially, what happened was the corporate books for a seller's corporation had been lost. There was a seller in the US who was unable to come to Costa Rica. They weren't able to go to a Costa Rica consulate. And we also had a lawyer involved who, had a hard time getting all of the documents reorganized to be able to finally close this deal. So we essentially went on for 9 months. I kid you not. That's how long we were under contract due to all of the documents needed and the slow bureaucratic processes. Now, this is a situation where the buyer did not walk away, and where I think a lot of people should stick with their Costa Rica real estate transaction. You see, there are very, very frequent and long delays in real estate transactions here. And if the property really means something important to you, if this is going to be your dream come true, and if the things holding up the process are really not the seller's fault, but instead just the bad confluence of circumstances and the bad administration of documents that you can frequently see here in the country, stick in deals because it can work out, and there are reasons, huge reasons, that people should stay with it and patiently work until they finally close a Costa Rica real estate deal. And in this circumstance, the two parties involved were willing, seeing that it was just an administrative delay. The buyer was more than happy to stay in the contract. The prices of similar properties actually increased again and again and again. And during this 9-month wait, we've actually seen that similar lots are now selling at much higher prices. But the funniest part about this deal was that we got finally, after all this time, to closing at 2 p.m. on Friday afternoon. And I'm feeling this wonderful sense of relief, thinking, holy cow, it's finally happening after all this time. This is an end of an era. And at 2:23, 20 minutes after closing was supposed to happen, I get the following message from the seller's attorney, and I share it with little bits of information blocked out to maintain privacy. And it's in Spanish, but this is the message I get for them at 20 minutes after closing, 9 months after we've been under contract. It says, "Hey, Matt, I just wanted to confirm that the price of this property is this amount." That's right, folks. After 9 months under contract and one of the most ridiculous processes ever on earth, the seller's attorney was confirming with me the price of the sale 20 minutes after we were scheduled to close. I got the message, and I have to admit, I just burst out laughing because that epitomizes Costa Rica and real estate transactions right there. 9 months in a closing, and we're still confirming the amount for the sale with the seller's attorney 20 minutes after closing happened. So anyhow, that's the funniest moment for this week. Be sure to join me next Sunday, 11 a.m. Costa Rica time. Do be sure to subscribe to my channel. I hope you've enjoyed your Sunday chat with Costa Rica Matt. I certainly have, and I'll look forward to seeing you next Sunday.